relationship between the soul and God. It's a short one. It's going to be very short about I don't get the words. Let me see. Okay, well let's just go from here. Hope you can all see. So the soul is part of God. I'm going to be reading, so I'm going to be looking at you more this week. So the purpose of this talk is really to establish three truths that Vaishnava Acharyas talk about. Hare Krishna, Namaste, and good evening. Three truths that Vaishnava teachers talk about, that is that the jiva, or the soul, is real. You would not think that you have to remind people of that, but actually it's true. People, even great philosophers, think that the soul, the individual soul, must be an imagination, must be a conception of the absolute that has fallen into Maya, and that Maya has some sort of hold on the absolute, some sort of control on Bhagavan, and that Bhagavan has forgotten his absolute identity and now identifies himself as a soul. This is a ridiculous idea, but we shall examine that in the next talk. But in this one, we just want to focus on that the jiva is real and the jiva is eternal and it does not change. The jiva is an individual conscious being. And finally, number 3, that it exists in a relationship of simultaneous unity and difference with Bhagavan. That at no point is the soul dissolved. At no point will we discover that the soul is illusory. And that personhood, being a person, is intrinsic to the nature of the self. So let's go to the Upanishads. You probably heard this one before. The jiva, or jiva means life, and atma means the self. So jiva, atma. Sometimes people say jiva, sometimes people say atma. The jiva is an infinitesimal particle of consciousness. So the Upanishads say 1/10,000th the size of the tip of a hair. If you take the tip of a hair, how big is the tip of a hair? It's figurative, it's symbolic. Don't try to get your calculators out. It's not spatial or quantitative. But it's here to give us an idea. If we divide the tip of a hair into 100 parts, and then take one of those parts and divide it again into 100 parts, that 10,000th particle is the dimension of the living entity. So just another reminder. That's from the Svetashvatara Upanishad. So that description is not to be understood as a material or in a spatial sense, but as an indication of qualitative minuteness. The jiva is atomic, finite, dependent, and limited, but fully real. Its minuteness does not imply insignificance, but rather its distinction from the infinite nature of Bhagavan. So jivas, or souls, are like sparks coming from the fire. And we see this in the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, the great Upanishad for forest dwellers, those who would distance themselves from fruitive fire sacrifices and try to understand the nature of the self. This book is meant for them. So the book says in 2 places, Yatagne kshudra vishpulinga vyucharanti evameva smad atmana sarvani bhutani ucharanti. As tiny sparks fly from a fire, so all individual souls have come from the Supreme. So there are many things you could say. Am I a spark? Where did I come from? How did we get here? That's next week. Please be patient. Or maybe the week after. So we have just this one natural analogy. When you see a bonfire, you see sparks coming out. This is the jivas, analogous to the jivas coming out of Bhagavan. Just hold that within your mind, along with the questions that you naturally have. So the jiva is a part of Bhagavan's tatastha, let's say Krishna's tatastha shakti, or the marginal potency. Remember, a couple of weeks ago we talked about marginal potencies, 3-4 weeks ago at least. Tatastha means on the beach. It's like when you have a beach, if there's a little crab walking along the beach, sometimes the crab is covered by the water as the waves come in, sometimes the crab is uncovered, and sometimes the sun is on the crab. So in the same way, the jiva is sometimes covered by maya, material energy, and sometimes uncovered from it. So, but, let me explain. The term marginal does not imply that the jiva is partly spiritual and partly material. The jiva is wholly spiritual, but its marginality only refers to its unique ontological position. It possesses the capacity to orient itself either towards Bhagavan or towards material nature. So that capacity doesn't compromise its spiritual nature. It's completely spiritual, but it has the choice of orientation. But it does explain its susceptibility to becoming conditioned. So when the jiva is covered by material energy, Prabhupada likes to say that the jiva is covered and thrown. Maya has two potencies, he says, covering potency and throwing potency. So Maya covers and then throws. What does that mean? Well, it means that first you're covered by different layers, and then you're thrown into, as a karmic, your karma begins at the point where you enter the material world. And this karmic bundle is attached to you for as long as you remain conditioned. How long is that? Well, it's as long as you want. You are in control. The only thing that you can do is orient yourself towards Bhagavan or orient yourself towards material energy. So souls which are covered are known as being defined by the limits and conditions that they've accepted. So because they've accepted conditions, what happens is that they're known as conditioned souls. They identify falsely with material energy, and the designations are accepted as the real self. These are known as upadhis. They're false designations. I'm a human, I'm a lion, I'm a tree, I'm a cat, I'm a snake, I'm a bee, I'm a Pakistani, I'm a Japanese, I am. All these are designations or upadhis, conditioned souls. When all those false designations have been removed, the soul is known as liberated or free. So from the Vishnu Purana, a very nice one, although the jiva has the facility to live in either the spiritual or material world, he suffers the threefold miseries because he's influenced by avidya, or nescience. Nescience, ignorance. It's not a word that we use in modern English, is it? Nescience. Look it up. Avidya, ignorance. If science means to know, then nescience means to not know, to be in ignorance, to ignore Bhagavan. If I'm in ignorance, I'm ignoring the truth. So what truth am I ignoring? I'm ignoring the truth that I am part and parcel of Bhagavan. The living entity exists in different forms in material condition. He is proportionately freed from Maya to greater or lesser degrees. Yeah. So we see this in different species of life. According to Vishnu Purana and other texts, there are 8,400,000 species of life that the pure spirit soul, the jiva, can inhabit. And of course, all the jivas are the same. The jiva in a tiger or a tree or a bat or a butterfly or a human or a president of America, the jiva is the same size, same nature. But accepting the false designations, that jiva becomes bound up and thinks and moves and believes himself to be the external body. And then we get to humans. Humans are conditioned in different ways. And we get some humans who believe in God, but they're also conditioned. I'm a part of God, they say. God is great. But I'm still conditioned. So therefore, to the extent that I'm conditioned, I will project on God some human qualities or some weaknesses that I myself am attached to. And I think God is pretty much like me. So these are man-made religions. They're not Sanatan Dharma. So the jiva souls, excuse me, the jiva souls are numberless, but Bhagavan is one. The relationship between them is that the jiva is completely dependent for its existence on Bhagavan. It's never independent at any time. The dependence that we talk about isn't just a case of the origin, but of continuous existence. In other words, the jiva is never at any time independent. And at no point does the jiva become self-sustaining. Its being, its consciousness, and its capacity for action are always grounded in Krishna, in Bhagavan. Okay, how are we doing? The jiva is simultaneously one with Krishna and yet apart. It is one with Krishna because it is spiritual in substance, eternal, and self-luminous. But it can't be completely the same as Krishna because he is omniscient or all-knowing, omniscient. All-knowing, he knows everything, everywhere, at the same time. But the jiva doesn't. The jiva is limited. In fact, my consciousness is limited. You are sitting there in your homes, listening to this, or in your car, or on the bus, wherever you are. And I don't know what's going through your mind. You don't know what's going through my mind. We are separated by geography, but also by consciousness. But Krishna knows everything that is in everyone's mind. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Rupa Goswami, he says, if we were one with God in all respects, if we were all-power-pervading and all-powerful, there would be no question of our being caged as we are in the material elements, forced to do battle against material nature. When we give up trying to be the Lord of the material nature, the Lord of the universe, and submit ourselves as servants of the Lord, material nature begins to release us from the hard struggle for existence, and we become happy. So the jiva is different from Bhagavan, yet can't be completely different, because Brahman, as we've heard in previous talks, Brahman is indivisible. Brahman is indivisible. Brahman is not depleted by the generation of souls, and therefore the existence of independent, yet spiritual selves points to the being simultaneously one and different from Bhagavan. This is only possible with the understanding of both the soul and matter as the Shakti of Bhagavan. And that's what we did a few weeks ago. That Bhagavan has Shakti, just as the sun has sunshine, Bhagavan has Shakti, or energy. And part of that energy is the soul itself. So if our individuality, our spiritual individuality, were ultimately unreal, then all teaching, learning, even liberation would become meaningless. When you have a guru and a disciple, a teacher and a student relationship, and one is teaching the other, that wouldn't make sense, would it? If we were all one. It just wouldn't make sense. Instruction, teaching someone, kind of presupposes a distinction between someone who knows the knowledge and that thing which is known. So to deny individuality is to undermine the very possibility of knowledge. And the fact that you can have meaningful dialogue in the Vedas between gurus and disciples for thousands of years means that that's evidence of distinction between jivas. One jiva is conditioned, one jiva is enlightened, even partially enlightened. Even a person who knows, it is said that what is the guru, it says in one section. A guru is one who knows the Vedas. A guru is one who knows one chapter of the Vedas. A guru knows one paragraph of the Vedas. A guru is one who knows one sentence of the Vedas and teaches it. So this is the definition. So if somebody knows something and teaches it, that's setting up a construct which would be rendered nonsensical if the very thing that you're teaching ultimately said, we are one, we are the same. So there's differences, there's individuality. So liberated soul, does the liberated soul have individuality? Yes. You do not merge when you become liberated. You don't merge with Bhagavan, you don't merge with Brahman, and you don't merge with Paramatma. No merging. So liberation means to become free from the layers of material identification and to become reinstated in your original position as a jiva in relationship to the Lord of the jivas. So in Bhagavad Gita, pretty early on, Krishna explains the permanent and lasting individuality of the soul, in contrast to what we sometimes hear from impersonalist philosophers who use the Bhagavad Gita to explain that all is one. He says, Na tvevaham jatu nasham, na tvang neme janadipa, na chaiva na bhavishyama, sarvevayam atakparam. Famous verse, one of the first verses that we like to learn. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings. That's the first clause. Never was there a time when we did not exist. Nor in the future, second clause, shall any of us cease to be. Wonderful. That's pretty early on. That's chapter 2, verse 12. And really Krishna only starts teaching anything at all in chapter 2. Chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita is just but it's an arrangement of the chariots and Arjuna protesting that I cannot fight, and then Krishna begins his teaching in chapter 2. So if we look at that verse, Bhavishyama shall exist, Sarve, all of us, Vayam, we, Ataparam, hereafter. So Krishna, he's just told Arjuna that lamenting for the physical body is the level of knowledge of a fool. You shouldn't lament, should not grieve, because you are the soul within. If he then was talking about material individuality, that would be foolish. But he does say spiritual individuality exists and persists hereafter, ataparam. So here's a passage from Srila Prabhupada, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, in his comments to this verse from the Bhagavad Gita, which you may have read 5 or 6 times, but it behooves us to read it again. The same Vedic truth given to Arjuna is given to all persons in the world who pose themselves as very learned, but factually have but a poor fund of knowledge. The Lord says clearly that he himself, Arjuna, and all the kings who are assembled on the battlefield are eternally individual beings, and that the Lord is eternally the maintainer of the individual living entities, both in their conditioned and their liberated situations. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Individual Person, and Arjuna, the Lord's eternal associate, and all the kings assembled there. They're on a battlefield, so they were looking out across the battlefield. So that's why Krishna says kings, because he's pointing with his finger. Krishna doesn't go into an abstract, philosophical, conceptual dialogue. He says, look, you, me, and all these kings, he points to them, are individual, eternal persons. It is not that they did not exist as individuals in the past, and it is not that they will not remain eternal persons. Their individuality existed in the past, and their individuality will continue in the future, without interruption. Finally, the theory that after liberation, the individual soul, separated by the covering of Maya or illusion, will merge into the impersonal Brahman and lose its individual existence, is not supported herein by Lord Krishna, the Supreme Authority. Krishna clearly says herein that in the future also the individuality of the Lord and others, as it is confirmed in the Upanishads, will continue eternally. If individuality is not a fact, then Krishna would not have stressed it so much, even for the future. Yeah, it's interesting that even though Krishna is Vedaischa sarvairaham eva vedyo vedanta veda vedevacham, Krishna is the knower of the Vedas and the object of the Vedas. He knows all the Vedas, and the Vedas come from him, and he's the object of them. At the same time, Krishna, in this verse, and I don't know the verse, but there's an Upanishadic verse that Krishna is quoting in this one, very, very similar. And you read this verse in the Upanishads and you think, Krishna is quoting from his own book. So we roll forward to the 12th century. There's a great saint known as Ramanuja. He was an Acharya. So his name is usually pronounced Ramanuja Acharya or Ramanujacharya. Now he strongly condemns the idea that Krishna would ever teach that the soul loses its individuality. He says, when a man in a desert discovers that what he thought was water is nothing more than a mirage, an optical illusion, from that point he stops seeking water in that optical illusion. Similarly, if Krishna knew that there was no ultimate individuality, he would have stopped teaching from that point on. So Krishna is reaffirming that there's individuality for the soul. So there's an argument against this. Would you like to know what the argument is? I'm sure you would. It's the Advaitins. And they believe in an ultimate oneness. And they have an answer. Well, Just as a piece of cloth, listen carefully, just as a piece of cloth, when burned to ash, continues to resemble a piece of cloth. You ever had that? You burn a piece of cloth. It's all ash, but the shape of the ash is in the shape of what you've just burned. Of course, if you touch it, it disintegrates. So they say, just as a piece of cloth, when burned to ash, continues to resemble a piece of cloth. So Krishna, even though being aware of oneness, is still aware of difference and could still be speaking of material individuality. So they're trying. But in his Gita Bhashya, his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, Ramanuja says this is absurd. He says, to imagine that Krishna, in knowledge of the unitary self, or the oneness, is still subject to the continuation of deceptive experiences would be in contradiction to scripture. It would also contradict his statement. So this is what Krishna says. Krishna would be contradicting himself if he contradicted the statement. I know, Arjuna, all beings of the past, present and future, but me no one knows. So this is Krishna, and he's explaining who he is. And the reader of the Bhagavad Gita should accept Krishna's statement on himself. I know these things, past, present and future, but you don't. So why then would Krishna speak of only material individuality? Then he continues. Furthermore, if the perception of difference and distinction are said to persist even after the supposed unitary self. Unitary self means there's only one of it. Unitary. There's only one thing, which is Brahman, which is everything that there is, all in one. In one sense, yes, but in another sense, we talked about Shakti, didn't we? That's the difference. The question will arise, to whom will the Lord and the succession of teachers of the tradition impart the knowledge? So he's asking the same question. If it's all one, to whom is Krishna and the line of gurus going to teach? No one who is not out of his senses would undertake to give instruction to his own reflection in a mirror. And finally he gets exasperated, and he writes this in his Gita Bhashya. He says, enough of these unsound doctrines which have all been refuted. He's had enough. Thus the jiva is an eternal, individual, conscious being, qualitatively one with Bhagavan, yet eternally dependent on him. The individuality of the jiva is neither illusory, neither is it temporary, but it's intrinsic to its nature. That means you are, who you've always been, through all these many thousands and thousands of lifetimes, cycling again through birth, death, old age and disease, over and over and over again, until one day Krishna says, Sa Mahatma Sadurlabha Vasudeva Sarvam Iti Sa Mahatma Sadurlabha. The great soul understands Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. Everything is me, Krishna says. You are a part of me. And our natural relationship with Krishna is one of service. And service means reciprocation also. It's not that I serve God, I serve a concept of God, and I never get anything back. No, immediately one performs bhakti. One feels bhakti within the heart. We talked about that, didn't we? It's reciprocation. And it's participation in a divine lila, divine relationship. Okay, but then the natural question, what's the natural question? If the jiva is, as you say, spiritual and self-luminous, how does it come to experience limitation, suffering and ignorance? So that's next week's subject.